they're witnessing this vodka. So for them, I like to give a short brief intro about the vodka event. So vodka is the acronym for value-oriented discussion on quality analysis, and it's a forum that sports the motto "Come learn something new." So the forum offers a unique platform within the software testing industry to strengthen the QA community through knowledge sharing. So Vodka offers a unique opportunity to interact with people who are equally passionate about the software testing and continuously try to better the art. This forum is an open event in which external participants can also join and get maximum benefit out of it. And external speakers are also welcome and encouraged to share their learnings and knowledge with us. At the end of the day, it's like passionate people come together to share and learn on latest testing trends. So Thoughtworks India has successfully facilitated many such events and across its 7 locations. And the Thoughtworks Chennai has hosted 31 events in the past. And we are now witnessing the 32nd edition of the OTCA event. And so before the pandemic hit, we used to have a full day workshop kind of a physical event. So facilitated in Thoughtworks premises. So wherein like the external participants, they can come and they can actually visit the Thoughtworks offices, and they can experience the way of working and the environment setup, everything. So, but for the past 2 years, we have like completely gone into the digital mode because of this work from home things, and the duration of the event was also like reduced to 1 hour or maximum we are doing 3 hours. And the frequency currently we are following is every quarter one OTCA event will be conducted. Like it will be like totally a maximum of at least like 4 sessions per year. And it will be hosted on one of the Wednesday evening. So before the pandemic, we used to have it on the weekends, or it basically on Saturday. So now, since we are doing it digitally, we are doing it on Wednesday evening and not on weekends. And that's all about the event. So once again, I take this moment to welcome you all for this interesting session. So let's make it more interactive one. And we have 3 speakers for the day, and we are very much excited to share their experience and knowledge with everyone. So let's start with a keynote by Dilip. So a brief intro about Dilip. He's a lead quality consultant at Thoughtworks. He loves to experience all roles in an agile environment. During his tenure, he has played roles such as like business analyst, and iteration manager, product owner, etc. He's a constant learner, a trainer, coach, and open source contributor. Over to you, Dilip.
Hey, thank you so much, Indumati, for that kind words. Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad to see you all here. This day being a work day and time still being less than 5:30. Seeing so many participants here really makes me happy. So, and when I was asked to deliver the keynote for today, I really felt that this particular topic doesn't need any kind of introduction between us. Right? This is no more 20 years ago, where no one knows or still has apprehensions about cloud. Now we are in 2021, reaching to we are in 2022. See, I'm already a year behind. We are in 2022, and there's so much of adoption in cloud than what was earlier. And this is no more a topic that one can ignore or can think of, keeping aside or not equipping themselves well. So, and in the initial days, there might be a little hesitation in adoption with respect to security issues or the unknownness that is around the whole topic of cloud and so many options being available. But I think in the recent years, cloud still holds the buzz, and the industry is a lot more favorable for adoption, right? And I think the adoption is still going ahead. With some of the stats that I was going through at least a couple of months back from Gartner, the cloud adoption would go up by 90% in the next coming few years. That tells the importance of how much focus have been, on the cloud part. Now, again, from the point of adopting cloud from a service provider, Now we are in the age of adopting cloud or choosing cloud services from multiple service providers, wherein we set up a multi-cloud or a hybrid cloud setup, right? Wherein you choose part of your infrastructure to be in cloud and part in-house, or you can choose your cloud infrastructure both from multiple service providers. You mix and match between GCP, Azure, and a lot more stuff. Now that gives a huge flexibility for business, advantages for business, which also thrives the adoption for the IT industry. Now, being QAs, I hope majority of the folks here today are QAs or people interested in knowing more about testing aspects around the quality aspects around cloud, right? Whatever hat you wear of a QA, let it be quality analyst, quality advocate, or quality ambassador, along with the domain knowledge, tech capabilities would always ensure our success and our team's success. Now, as I said before, cloud being the focused part and one more strong pillar in whatever we are building these days, we can't ignore cloud anymore, right? And I can't think of any better time than today where this particular talk or more talks around how testing in cloud should happen, or what are the pitfalls that we would generally fall in, what are the aspects that we should be focusing on can be discussed, right? With that, I won't hold long, and I hope you folks will have a great time today. Yep. Once again, welcome to you all. Over to you, Indumati.
Thanks you, Dilip. Okay, let's start with the talk. We have two speakers, Ajay and Tushar. Let's start with their brief intro. So over to you, Tushar.
Can you share the screen to them? Yes. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining and giving a chance to explain the topic on the cloud. So we are here. I just first gone through with the topic. So we are here to explain you the unleashing cloud testing and the challenges. So I and with me the Tushar. So I'm introducing by myself first. Hi, I'm Ajay Makode. I have a 7 year plus of total year of experience, and in Thoughtworks, I almost completed 3.5 years. I worked on the various technologies and various testing tools. I'm not giving you all the names because there is no need at all. So yeah, I worked as a senior consultant in Thoughtworks. I worked on performance testing, API testing, web automation, mobile testing a little bit. I worked on a different framework as well. So yeah, and I worked as a banking domain, insurance domain, media and enterprises. So yeah, that is pretty much about me. Over to you, Tushar.
Yeah, thanks, Ajay. So hello everyone, Tushar Varma here. I have basically 12 plus years of experience in QA field. Joined Thoughtworks 2 years back. Mostly I worked in almost all the automation areas, whether it be a web automation or API automation. Along with that, I have worked on performance testing and the security testing. Not more on that because I did not get a chance to work on that. But yeah, my most of the experience has always been on the web and the API automation. Currently, I'm playing a role of lead consultant over here. I would not say I have worked on many multiple domains because my projects has never been more on the domain side. I work mostly on the product-based companies where domain doesn't comes into picture very oftenly. So yeah, that's about me.
Thank you, Tushar.
Yeah, before that, participants, in between, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand. We will allow you to talk, or you can post the questions on the Q&A section. Let's keep it more interactive. Even speakers are expecting that.
Yeah, thank you, Indumati. So I'll just quickly gone through with the agenda, what we are actually covering as part of this session. So we are covering, first of all, I'm just going through with the agenda one by one. We are covering here is what is a cloud testing, different type of cloud testing, SaaS testing, and the testing challenges on the SaaS application. We have a case study, why the cloud testing is needed, because why people are thinking that we should jump to the cloud testing, not the on-prem testing, and what are the differences between them, right? And what are the challenges we are facing as part of the cloud testing. So these are the agenda we are covering with. If you have any kind of question on this, please raise your hand and you can ask in between, as Indumati mentioned. So not wasting the time, quickly jumping to the first one. Over to you, Tushar.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ajay. So moving on to the topic, which is all about what is cloud testing. We have heard, like, when let's go back to the previous, decade, like, where we did not have a terminology of cloud. Everything, whichever application we are working on, they were deployed on the on-premise servers. You might have seen, like, we do have a web server, we do have an application server, we used to have a database which is residing on a specific personal servers. So there were the physical servers which you can see, like, in each and every office wherever you're working on. Then suddenly there is a need for the cloud. In the year of 2000 2001, there is a need came for the cloud computing. There was a terminology which was floating across in the IT industry, like, hey, why don't we move ahead with the cloud computing? Why we need this physical servers? Why we need to be a kind of application where all the infrastructure needs to be taken care by on the physical level? Why we need the on-premises servers and everything? That's where, like, the cloud computing came into market, and there were a couple of cloud service providers which came into market, which were helping us provide the resources, helping us provide the infrastructure for our application to get deployed and start working on. Then when this cloud computing was into boom, and all the applications were moving, the first question which was there for all the QAs is, hey, how we are going to do the testing? How we are going to make sure that our application is working fine when the application is deployed onto the cloud resources? That can be on the single cloud service provider, as what Dilip mentioned, or it can be on the multiple service providers. How we are going to test that our application, right? So with that, I'll just move on to the next aspect, like what cloud testing is all about. So cloud testing is a form of software testing which actually tests the performance, the security aspect, the functional or the non-functional requirements of our web application, but on the cloud computing environment. When I say the cloud computing environment, that includes all whatever infrastructure is required for the application to work. That is totally, like, deployed into a cloud. That is, resources are provided by the cloud service provider. So if you see, now we don't have a physical servers, we don't have any kind of the infrastructure physically created, which needs to be maintained separately, which needs to be created different separately for the different environments. We have a cloud computing environment which is totally, like, kind of configured for us, so that we can deploy our application and we can test our application. So that is what is called as cloud testing. Now when I say cloud testing, there are multiple aspects to the cloud testing. Some of the IT industry folks say that, okay, whatever testing we are doing on the cloud services, that is called as cloud testing. For example, whatever infrastructure or resources has been provided by the cloud service provider, if you do testing on that resources and make sure that resources are working fine or not, some people call that as a cloud testing. Some people talk that whatever data is flowing for the application from one cloud service resources to the other cloud service resources, and verify whether the APIs, the microservices are working fine or not. That we call some people call as cloud testing, right? The cloud testing which we are going to cover is nothing but the application level cloud testing. Your application is deployed onto the cloud environment, and we want to make sure that our application is working fine, or the application is working as per the requirement, or as per the SLA or business requirement document, whatever way you can say it. That is what is called as cloud testing, and that is what we are going to cover. We don't really care, like, whether the resources which has been provided to us by the cloud service, they are working fine or not. That service is something which is provided by the cloud service provider. You don't have to be worried about it. But your application, which you have deployed into the cloud service, whether they are working fine or not, That is something which we need to take care of, because now at this point, when you see the cloud testing, we do have some features of cloud testing which we want to discuss. The first is dynamic test environment. I don't know, how many of you folks have saw that as a challenge, that whenever you want to create a dev environment or QA environment or the pre-prod environment or the prod environment, we used to do all that. Different physical servers used to be there for the specific environment, but that is not the case in the cloud testing. In the cloud testing, you just need to do some configurations on the cloud service provider, which will allocate different resources to your different environment. So the creating of the dynamic test environment or whatever environment you want to work upon, it's of very less maintenance. It's of very less less configuration is required, and it's not that much costly. Second is like the easily customizable. We know that, okay, we have a different environment, so that will need more customizations of your physical servers. But in terms of cloud computing environment, we don't need kind of different configurations. It's easily customizable. You can create n number of environments as per your requirement. Based on, you can divide your resources to work for different environments. Scalability. Whenever we say physical servers, we have physical servers that requires more cost. When we want to put some more extra physical servers, that requires more cost, that requires more infrastructure level costing, when you want to work on the product. In terms of cloud computing environment, the scalability is vast, it's easily configurable, and it is well managed, or capability is there to scale your product to the certain extent. And finally, the low cost. Everyone knows the physical servers require lots of maintenance, lots of the connections and everything which you used to do. But as compared to cloud computing, once you have the cloud service provider which is providing you the resources, you just have to change the configurations and it will be done for you. So with that, this is all about the cloud testing. Now, the one question which I have, when I was going through this, hey, we are doing the testing on the application. Doesn't matter whether the application is on the physical server or on the on the cloud computing environment. What difference does it make when we are testing a cloud based application or the on-premise based application? So let's go ahead with that. Like, what difference do you see, right? So now, every one of you knows, that what is the QA lifecycle. What is the, in the agile, how do you start testing your application? You gather the requirement, you prepare the test strategy, and you already have created all the infrastructure created. You do the testing, and you share the report, and that's it, right? What difference does it make when it comes to the cloud testing? So in the terms of cloud testing, the process is not at all different. It's almost similar. The only difference when I see is, like, we do gather the business requirement from the clients, or from the product owners with whom you are working on. The QAs at the same time, they design the testing strategy, they design what different type of testing you're going to do. But by that time, when you are in the planning phase, as a part of a shift left approach, where the QAs are also involved in the in the decision of which cloud computing provider we should go ahead for the product, that's where, when you discuss with your team, you select and decide on the cloud service provider. And that's where, the QAs also do play a role in order to understand that which cloud service provider will be fruitful for our product. So we do the selection of the cloud service provider. Then once we decide with the cloud service provider, we leverage that cloud service provider, whatever resources they are providing us for our product. We make use of that resources. We configure all the changes in the cloud computing environment which is required for our product to get deployed. And then moving on, we do the testing of the product, followed by we check whether the whatever testing goals or whatever the intention of the testing is, we are monitoring that closely. And finally, we deliver the reports. Now, when I see this life cycle, the difference which I see is the QAs also play an important role to understand that which cloud service provider you should move on. right? That is what the role of a QA when they are in the planning phase of, of any designing of a software or designing of a product. Along with creating a testing strategy, QAs also plays a major role in understanding and putting their thoughts on the table that which cloud service provider you should go ahead. And when QAs think about it, they should also look for like which testing tool whatever testing tool they are using, is that compatible with this cloud service provider which you are going to proceed ahead. That's where QAs also start thinking on that path, that which service provider you should go ahead. Because service provider means all the infrastructure cost, all the infrastructure maintenance is done by the service provider. But when you are testing as a QA, which kind of testing tools is compatible with the service provider? Whatever tools you're looking for from the QA perspective, is that compatible or not? What kind of cost, extra cost, what kind of resources they are going to use? So all that decision has to be taken by the QA, and that's where that's the point where the QA, that the cloud testing life cycle is different from the conventional type of testing which we would do on the on-premise application. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to the next part, different type of cloud testing. Again, the same questions arise to my mind, which I already discussed. Hey, I have this application, doesn't matter whether it's on on-premise or on the cloud computing environment. What kind of testing you do? I mean, every one of you know, the testing is divided into two parts mostly, the functional testing and the non-functional testing. We call it as a cross-functional testing over here. So uh, both of the things are really required for the cloud-based application. I would say yes, both of them are required. Then in that case, what is the different kind of technique which you follow when you are doing a cloud testing, right? So let's look on that. Here, if you see the cloud testing techniques, I have divided into three parts. The first is a functional technique, the another is a non-functional technique, and the third one is a ability testing technique. So every one of you know, the functional techniques which we do on the cloud-based application, we do the system testing, we do the testing on the fully integrated system, and we check whether the application which is residing on a cloud computing environment is working fine or not. In terms of integration testing, when you are in on-premise application, you check whether the different modules of the product is integrated properly or not, or the data is flowing properly or not, or you're making sure that there is no kind of data which is getting leaked, or the whatever data the source is sending, whether the target is able to compile it properly and and process that data in order to get at some results. We call it that as a integration testing. That's the same thing which we do in the cloud testing. The only difference is here we have to go to the cloud service provider resources, and in the resources we have to check whether the data which is flown from your client, whether it is getting processed properly to the backend resources of the cloud provider or not. We want to make sure that whatever data is flowing from the client, are they getting processed within the resources of the cloud computing or not? That is the change in the approach of integration testing which you are doing on the cloud testing, and that requires the integration of the data, and that requires the interfaces in the cloud. So whatever interfaces, whatever integration points you have in your application with the cloud service provider, you need to understand that, and based on that you have to do the testing. Yeah. The third one is the user acceptance testing. So when I say the user acceptance testing, that means that whatever cloud service provider you are using, whether the cloud service provider is actually is actually kind of giving you the proper results or giving you the expected result from the application or not. Yeah. So this type of testing is actually done to verify whether the current cloud service provider, right, is working properly or not, or basically on the front end you can say the product is working properly or not from the user's perspective. right? So this type of testing you have seen, like, in the on-premise or of the off-premise, we generally have it. So there's not much difference, I would say. In terms of non-functional testing, again, like, the non-functional testing, we have seen performance testing, we have seen security testing also. There is something called as business requirement. I think I mentioned this before, that in case of shift left, QAs are the one who get involved in trying to understand that which cloud service provider you should go ahead. So whenever the QAs come up with the business requirement, or the QAs get the business requirement, the QAs also plays a major role to examine that business requirements and understand whether their products are feasible for the cloud service approach or not, right? See, till now, I have never seen any kind of product which is not feasible with the cloud service provider. But you never know what kind of different, different product you can work on. But whenever you are starting from the scratch, you need to understand that whatever business requirements, whatever system requirements you have got from the client, whether they are feasible to be deployed on the cloud service provider or not. That is called as business requirement testing. Now, this kind of testing you never do when you are in testing phase. This type of testing you do when you are on the planning phase. And trust me, this is a testing which will create a building block for the cloud computing solutions. So this is a very important kind of testing which you do on the planning phase, and that requires the total dedication of the QA. So again, like, in the business requirement testing, you have a kind of availability testing. So availability testing means whatever business requirements you have, and when you have a business requirements, you get you get the requirement from the product side. But when you are searching for the cloud solutions, you have an understanding of the cloud solutions also. So whether your business requirement is actually adhering to the cloud service provider's requirement or not, that's where the availability testing comes into picture. Let me give you a very good example. Let's say I am doing a kind of I'm working on a product, and I want a testing tool, let's say Selenium, which is you know for example, there are I'll take, like, two cloud service providers. One is Azure and one is AWS. I have checked on the two cloud services, which is Azure and AWS, and I have decided as a QA that I am going to use Selenium, or let's say I'm going to use a browser stack. When we are deciding on the cloud service provider, I need to understand whether the browser stack is compatible, or is available in terms of AWS infrastructure or not, or in the Azure infrastructure or not. If browser stack is not is not compatible with the AWS, then I think somewhere I can put this point on the table that, hey, AWS does not support browser stack. So that kind of availability, that kind of cloud availability testing is something, like, that you should go ahead when you're doing the availability testing. Also, there are some different aspects also, like in terms of developers, in terms of business, you should check in the cloud whether the cloud is available, the cloud services are available all the time, and there is no downtime during during the disaster, or somewhere the application, the cloud services gets broken down. That should not be the case. So there should not be at any downtime which actually affects the business of the client. So that all that aspect you check, like, when you are working on the availability testing. So I would say availability testing is a kind of subset of a business requirement. Coming to the security testing, every one of you knows that the security testing is equally important when you're working on the product. So I would not go more deeper into that, but the static security testing and the dynamic security testing, the penetration testing, and all the things are required in terms of cloud testing also, because every one of you know, like, the security testing is equally important, and you need to understand from the your application is secured enough to move ahead. The one thing which I would really like to point out is in security testing, when you are in on-premise or off-premise, on-premise, I would say, like, for example, on the physical server, you don't think about network much. because the network thing is something like, all the servers are all at the same location, so the network aspect doesn't comes into picture. But in the cloud testing, we do have a network security also, which is equally pretty important. The reason for that is your cloud resources are located into different areas. You might have a multi-cloud service provider also. For example, you are using the dev resources, from the AWS, or you're using the logging resources from the Azure. In that case, the networking security is a main aspect, and that is something you should definitely test it out in order to make sure that the network glitch is not causing the intrusion of the external viruses, or external third party intervention. So network security is something which I would really talk, like, which differentiates from the conventional and the cloud testing. Scalability and performance, I won't go into deeper. The performance testing where you do in the conventional product, it's the same, like, which you do in the cloud testing. Because in cloud testing also, as I told you, the resources are like, widely spread. You need to make sure that the performance of the application is not getting impacted. The latency between the client and the responses which you're getting from the server, that should not get affected, as per the SLA. So that's why you do the latency testing, you do the load testing and stress testing. But let me tell you one thing: the performance testing in the conventional product, which is not based on the cloud, that is not that much impacted. But in the cloud-based application, this is the most important aspect which you should concentrate on: the performance testing and the security testing. Because you don't have any control on the physical, on the the cloud-based resources, and you can just configure it, but you don't have much control that, okay, if I want to if I want to use more resources or not. So in that case, when you're doing the testing of the product from the performance perspective, you should understand that how much resources I need, or what kind of resources I need, in order to make sure that the performance is not getting impacted. So this latency testing, or the performance testing, I would say, is the important aspect which actually differentiates between the cloud testing and the conventional testing. Moving on to the ability testing techniques, I would say, like, more in terms of compatibility and the inoperability testing. So in the compatibility testing, it is a testing which is performed on an application to evaluate whether your application is feasible, or your application is actually using the resources of the client, of the cloud service provider or not. Whatever resources the cloud is providing you, your application is actually compatible with that or not. So as we know, like, if you are using multiple cloud service providers, this compatibility is something which plays a very important role, because your data is moving from one cloud service to another cloud service, and that's the integration point where you should check the compatibility testing. Disaster recovery testing, every one of you know that, in terms of suddenly, like, when the application went down, your application should be should have that capability to get the recovered properly. So that is not something which you can write in the application. That is something which the infrastructure has to has to provide you that capability. So right now also, like, the cloud service providers are providing you different kind of load balancers, different kind of infrastructure strategies, which will make sure that if there is any disaster happening on the application, your application will not go down, or it can be handled on the disaster level, right? The next is a multi-tenancy testing. So if you know, like, multi-tenancy refers to the principle, like, where a single instance of the software runs on the different servers, or runs on the different client organizations, or on the different client browsers. So whether your application, if your application is a multi-tenant application, then you should check that the application is working in the different organizations, or in the different browsers properly or not at the same time. So the multi-tenancy testing is something which depends on your product. If your product is not supporting multi-tenancy, then you should not do this. Otherwise, if it is doing it, then you should do the testing on the multi-tenant part also. So these are the different kind of like, the cloud testing which we do, which we do actually. In this, I would stress mostly on the the non-functional part, which is performance testing and security testing, plus the functional aspect, because you will definitely see a difference in the functional testing when you are testing a cloud-based application. Yeah. Okay, moving on. So I'll ask Ajay to take over from here regarding the SaaS testing.
Yeah, before jumping to that, Tushar, we have one question. Someone asked that nowadays the cloud provider provides serverless function like the Lambda function. How we are going to test in microservice architecture over the clouds? We are going to take.
Okay, so if I understand this, nowadays cloud provider provides services functions like Lambda functions. Okay, how we are going to test in microservices architecture over cloud? See, microservices is something like, which is again kind of like, deployed into different cloud service providers. So you can say like, in AWS you have multiple microservices which are which are getting deployed into your AWS. So we understand like, see, the Lambda function is something like, which is provided only as of now. Understand it is in AWS, right? It is not there into like, the Azure or any other cloud service providers. So it depends on the application, like, that if your application is based on the microservices, then you can use Lambda functions, for going ahead with the serverless part. But not all the microservices application do require serverless functions, or that does not, you can leverage that functionality of AWS, but actually that is not required. Like, whenever you are having a microservices application which is on the cloud, for the Lambda function. So I think it again depends on the application, like, how your microservices architecture has been designed on that. And let me tell you, like, Lambda functions is as available only in AWS. Azure doesn't have a kind of serverless functions, which I cannot think of right now. So having a Lambda functions or not having a Lambda functions, it's almost like, the same way which you test the microservices, over the cloud. It doesn't make any difference. The Lambda function is something which is a kind of like the wrapper functionality which is getting added into your infrastructure to make your transitions or transactions very smoothly, right? So I think in AWS also I have never used much Lambda functions on that. uh, so yeah, does that answer your question, Pradeep? Okay, I don't know, like, whether Pradeep can hear us or not. But yeah, if he has any other questions, he can ask there. We'll move on to Akash, AFA. Okay, I'm sorry, I did not understand the abbreviation. What does it mean, AFAIK? As far as I know,
I
okay,
know.
okay. As a part of shared responsibility model, environment available. Okay, as a part of a shared responsibility model, environment availability is maintained by cloud service providers and comes in their purview, be it IaaS, PaaS, or SaaS. So do we need to test that part? Yes, we need to test that part. And, the reason for that is like, we do have different environments, like, in the product, in the application, and creating all that environments is also taken care by the cloud-based services. But the configuration, each environment will have its own configuration file. Each environment will have its own resources, its own resource usage, its own instances. If you talk in terms of AWS, which has to be maintained by us, because they are providing you the resources, but you have to create that resources. You have to create the instance of that resources into AWS. So the configuration part we are doing as a the project team. So definitely, like, we need to test that, because the resources they are providing, but we are configuring that resources for our understanding, or for our, as per our requirement of environment. So we should definitely test that part also. It's because, see, the main problem which we face, you might have also seen, like, some things are working in dev, some things are working in QA, but they are not working in prod, or they are not working in pre-prod, right? And most of the times, the problem or the root cause is nothing but the changes in the configuration. The changes in the configuration which you have done on the infrastructure side or on the cloud services also. So that's the reason testing in all the environment is also a part of, like, of a part of a cloud testing, you should ask. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to the next one. As a QA, how can I test Azure infrastructure component like Azure Key Vault, Azure Container Registry, Azure Kubernetes services with Python? Rajesh, I won't go more into Python stuff and everything, but let me tell you one thing. This I would like to, like, revise it again. The role of a QA in terms of cloud testing is not testing the infrastructure components. You are not going to test that, hey, the key vault is working fine or not. You are not going to test whether the container registry is working fine or not. You are not going to test whether the Azure resources is going to work or not. But you are going to test whether the keys which you have kept in the key vault is working properly or not. So when I say it is working properly or not means your application or your product is taking that keys in the key vault into consideration. For example, let me give you a good example. In the key vaults, we generally keep the different kind of keys. Let's say for the dev environment, separate configuration file, separate keys for the QA environment or something. Your application is taking the keys from the Azure Key Vault or not. That is something which you have to test. But I'm not saying again that you should check whether if I add a key saying that prod is equal to some garbage value, whether whether it is getting added into the key vault or not. I'm not checking the functionality of the key vault. I'm just checking whether the integration of our application with the key vault is working fine or not. So that is, as a QA, you should make a note. The one which you're talking about, Rajesh, is something called as testing cloud, testing on a cloud service.
Yeah. So that is comes under the IaaS. So that is come under the infrastructure as a service, right? So again, we have a different model. As in the cloud side, there are the three models, right? I'm answering the question. So in the cloud side, there are the three models. One is the infrastructure as a service. Second one is a platform as a service, and third one is a software as a service. So what you just asked as a infrastructure as a service, right? So whatever the infrastructure you are asked for the provider, right? The cloud provider, they are making sure that that infrastructure is working fine or not. How their infrastructure connecting with each other, how they are not gonna talk to each other, how they are like just try to understand like this. They have some certain set of tools in their cloud, right? You ask something and you ask that I want, hey AWS, I wanted to test my application in such a way that I can cover the performance testing. I want to run my application on this Kubernetes cluster. I want to deploy on that on Kubernetes cluster. I wanted to create my Docker image. So you ask that for. So they are providing the resources to help you to utilize the resources and give you the opportunity to taken care of this. He's taken care of that part. He's giving you the resources. Okay, you can use these resources, and whatever you ask for, you can achieve that. In this way, you can, is your, I mean, the cloud provider is working. So your work is like, we are not testing the resources actually, which they are providing. We are testing the application which we deploy on the cloud, and is their cloud, it means we have deployed our application, is our application is properly working on that resources or not. That is the main agenda for our testing. We should not say that, oh bro, you are saying that that your load balancer is not working properly. What is happening? So they are going to check that their side, okay, we are using the load balancer, but it is not providing that accuracy. So they are going to check. There might be some issue from their end, or maybe there is some microservice, or there is some connection loose in the integration part. So they are going to check it. So we, in that way, at least we know that something happened. So we are going to raise this thing to the cloud provider, and they are taken care of that part. Is this answer your question, Rajesh? If it is not, then please let us know. We'll discuss after that. Means after the, you can ping us. Yeah. So moving towards the SaaS testing, the next agenda is the SaaS testing as a testing challenges. So can you, Tushar, change the slide, please? So yeah, so we are here to discuss with the SaaS testing. So SaaS testing, as I mentioned you, that the SaaS full form is the software as software as a service, right? So software as a service is referred to the set of testing methodology and the process used to ensure the application built using the software and the service model of the development function as designed. So as I mentioned, right? So whatever the application in which your application is built on and which model is your application is built on, that is more important. So we have to test the application on that particular models, right? So there are some challenges, or you can say the SaaS application testing challenges. So I'll put that on first. So the first challenge is like the frequent upgrade and releases. So as everyone know that any of the cloud provider, right, they frequently change in their backends, and once they change in backend, it will impact on your application. So, but it is a very short time. They provide the availability. So they changes in the backend, and we are not aware of that. Okay, they are changing this thing because they are not prior to ping you that, hey dude, I'm going to change this thing in my backend. Please taken care of that part. So that is the one of the challenges we can face in the SaaS application. Second one is a backend component left to be validated. So most of the time what we are observing is in the on-prem as well, we are like looking the web application only. We are not checking the backend is properly responding or not. So as you see that in the API testing as well, once you are requesting something, if you are getting the proper response, you said that your application is working, but we are not checking that exactly it is giving the same response or not. So sometimes we forget to do that, right? Sometimes two backend components are associated with the user interface of the application, and we are not targeting the user, the interface level of the application. So we are like left to validate those part as well. So these are the one of the challenges. So next one is the privacy and integrity of test data. As you see that we, for example, if you are using any secure data, or if you are in a banking domain or insurance domain, and any kind of, means this kind of domain, right? And you are getting the data from the customers. So those data is very secure, and that is very important for the particular customer or the bank. But there are like very instances where you can see the data leak, the data is rendered, right? The data is passed somewhere and someone utilizing those data, right? So these kind of challenges we can face as part of the SaaS testing. Next one is verify all the licenses. So as you know that whenever we are testing any mobile application or a banking application or the insurance application, they are giving you one certificate to install, that they are giving you their VPN to just secure the data. So what they are exactly doing, they are just doing that, putting the firewall in front of all the barricades. So people are trying to hack the application or reaching the application and fetching the data, but we are, as a QA, we are not verifying all the licenses each and every time, but we should, right? So these are the things. Next one is a no standardization, right? So what do you mean by the no standardization? In that we have an application, right? We have an application, but there is, most of the application is not prepared on the some standard level. For example, there are some set of rules on that the application is built, or on the set of rules then the application is made for. or they are following all the best practices and making the application. So somewhere we felt that part, and as a QA we are not noticing them, right? So these are the challenges. And handle performance, as Tushar mentioned that, right? The performance and security, he put that point forcefully, that the performance and the security is the more concern in the cloud side, right? So handle the performance is the biggest issue to be handled on. So because the thing is, in the same premises, you in the same cloud provider is providing you the space, and that space you are creating a different environment. So nothing but once that particular environment, the load is high, that will impact to the other environment. So you have to manage those parts. So you are not said that the performance is consistently same for the cloud. So these are the key challenges. So how as a QA we can overcome those things? So as a QA we can overcome those parts to automate the script to tackle the frequent update of challenges. So what's not in our hand to stop this, to stop the update from the provider? But what we can do, we can automate the script in such a way that, okay boss, if any update will come, I as a manually change those update one, and then my check the feasibility of my application, and then check the application is working fine or not, and then I'm changing the version of that. So in this way you can overcome those challenges. Yeah, moving to the challenges of the cloud testing. Yep. So as you see in the cloud testing, there are many challenges, right? So as you know that in the on-prem and the cloud, so there is no different as such to test, but there are multiple challenges which is a common and not common. So I noted down the few of the challenges over here, which is a more important to be noticed on, right? So first one is a security gap. So I'm putting in this way, if you see that whatever the application you deployed in any environment, either it is on-prem, either it is on cloud, no one give you the 100% guarantee to secure your data, right? So organizations sometimes may have a concern about the cloud software testing provider, that they care about, they said that they care about the private data and sensitive information, but sometimes what happened, the data is leaked, cyber attack happened. So as I'm giving you the one of the example is the Aadhaar data breach, right? As you already know that LinkedIn data breach, Facebook data breach, Google data breach. So they are also on the cloud, but there are highly chances that the data can be leaked. But it is not like that we can't prevent the data leak. We can prevent the data leak. We can prevent all these things, but we have to pay for that to the provider. Next one is a unpredictable cost. So again, as I mentioned you, if you wanted to, cloud computing tools are most cost effective, as everyone know, because if you have the low infrastructure, you can utilize the same infrastructure. But if you wanted to extend something, so you have to pay more. But again, there is a clause. So the thing is, if you think that, okay, I need this thing on this duration, then you can pay for that resource on that duration only, and you can reduce and the resource costing at that time. In that way, you calculate the cost of the resources which you are utilizing, then you can manage those things. Second one is the regularity compliances. So as you see, the remote infrastructure, right? The remote infrastructure does not need free or mandatory regulations. So for example, if some government said that no, this regulatory thing, I am not allow you to launch this website on my browser or my domain, right? You can't use this website on this domain. So there are regulatory compliances as well. Next one is a third party dependencies. As you see that software testing in cloud side, there are different external environment as well. So if you if the provider, for example, if AWS is down, so right, AWS is down, then if your application is deployed on the AWS, your application is also impacted, right? It is directly impacted because we are, or maybe for example, if you are using one cloud service and you are using the another cloud service for the some other tools, right, and integrating with them, and one of the cloud service is down, then it will indirectly hamper on your application as well, right? Next one is a tight deadline. So tight deadline means, so in the SaaS testing, the account that cloud provider are frequently updated and extended with the new feature, right? So in that, they are not giving you the time to understand what the changes you have to make in your application to handle this kind of situation. For example, you change the version, you updated some new feature, and you remove some feature which you are using in your application. So in that condition, you don't have that much of time to change those things according to their update, right? So this is the time deadline. Next one is a complex migration. So migration from the local data center. So, okay, I'm putting in this way. So when we are migrating from any data center, which is a local one, to the cloud, or the vice versa, right? So that is a huge challenge. So to recheck of the application on the infrastructure side and updating the cloud strategy accordingly, right? That is the one of the major thing you have to consider as a QA, right? Next one is a live upgrade. As I mentioned you, if someone change something on the fly, you don't have the time, so that you can think on that area as well. The third party restriction, yes, there are possibility that you are using AWS and you need something which is not allowed to other third party tool for AWS. They're restricted. They are saying, no, I'm not providing my services to the AWS cloud, or I don't want to integrate with this people. So in this way, there is an access right come, right? And the last, not the least, verify out the cloud testing services, right? So in the verify of the cloud testing services, effectively the testing required particular tool, means all the application are using the same tool. That is not the case. Each and every application have the different functionality, and according to the application we are choosing the tool, right? So in the services, in cloud service, we have to think as Tushar already mentioned, as a cloud life cycle, right? So at the time of the discussion, and we have to understand first the application's behavior, what the application is needed for the testing, and what are the tool I need to be test, and what are the scope of the testing for that particular application. So you have to think on that area as well. So these are the key challenges of the cloud side. Yeah. Can you go to the case study? Okay. So I give you one of the example over here. So I'm just giving you the case study where I see that the challenges are there, but no one noticed it. So as I give you the one of the example is IRCTC. So basically I have a 4 points for different application. But what I concluded from this application is the problem is same. The data handling, performance, latency, quick response, mobility, reliability. So these all are things are the same. For example, if you see, everyone know that in the IRCTC, the Tatkal ticket booking at the time of 10 to 11 might be changed, but just take an example, 10 to 11. At that time, so many people, the traffic is very high, right? The traffic is very high, and not every people are able to get the tickets. But few of the people are taking the tickets. How they are getting the tickets? Why they are getting the tickets? Why I am not getting the tickets? Why the server is down that time? So these kind of situations occur every day. But IRCTC is jumping to the cloud? No. Is they are doing something for that? No. Again, if I'm moving to the education.com, So there is one of the application in the education.com. They have a one server in the Virginia, right? In the they have one system. In that system, they put all the data. But in after 1 or 2 years, that service provider stopped their servicing and said that I am not no more providing you these services. You take your data and keep it somewhere else. I am not giving you any kind of thing. Again, they should not stop their services to the people. So what they are doing? So in all the situation, what is the same? The common thing is the same thing. They don't have the space. They don't have the reliability of the thing. They don't have the trust. So they can rely on the longer basis. They don't have the place to handle those situations. So what they are going to do? Right. So all the conclusion of the benefits. So as you understand, what are the problems are there in the cloud, means on the on premises. So if I'm putting why we have to move to the cloud side, why, what are the benefit of the cloud side? So in the cloud side, that is easy to use. You have the UI. You do not need to do anything. You just need to ask to the provider, I need this. They are providing you. You have to just configuring this and you have to test the application. That's it. Second thing is flexible. This is very flexible. If you wanted to use the resources, use. If you do not want to use the resources, don't use. Right? There is no time duration. If you want to use any resource for the 1 hour, you can use the 1 hour or month, or I'm just giving you the example hypothetically. Don't take a 1 hour only. Yeah. Next one is a cost effective. So cost effective is the one of the criteria where you have to think on. So where you have to collectively think on, okay, how effectively I maintain the cost and utilizing more and more resources. So you have to calculate on the pen and paper, and there are the cost. And because as you mentioned, I mean, already know that AWS have the different cost list. Azure have the different cost list. Same the GCP have the different cost list, right? So according to that, you have to utilize it. Okay, I have this money budget, and this budget I need this resource. How I can utilize those resources? Second, next one is the reliability. So whatever the data provided, service provider you are using, that is more reliable. As everyone know that AWS, Azure, and GCP, and there are many more will come, but I know the 3 1. So they are more reliable. You do not need to think on, okay, if this happened, whom I going to talk, right? So you have the vision on that also. Next one is scalable and high performance. So you can scale up, you can scale down, as I mentioned already. And the high performance means the performance is not impacted. That's why the people are jumping on the cloud, right? And the next one is a secure one. As I already mentioned, they have their different layer of the security. It's depend on your budget and your cost, how effectively you can use that security resources. Yeah. Moving to the cloud testing and conventional testing. Over to you, Tushar.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Ajay. So now every one of you knows, like, that what is required in the cloud testing, and what are the key areas or the key impacted areas which you should concentrate on when you are doing the testing on the cloud native applications. So we'll just give a kind of glimpse now that you might right now at this point of time you might have understood that, okay, what kind of difference do I see, like, in the cloud testing, as when you talk in cloud, when you compare cloud testing versus the conventional testing or the traditional kind of testing which you do on the different on premises applications or somewhere. So I think like every one of you might have got an idea, but like, let's look at the bigger list, like, what difference does it make? The usage of the resources, in terms of, like, physical, in the physical server, like, or in the conventional testing, when you want to increase your infrastructure, you need to pay like a kind of licenses cost. If you want to create a separate infrastructure for the different environment, you need to have a separate licenses. You need more kind of a cost gets increased because you want to add your infrastructure for the traditional type of applications. In terms of like the applications which are there on the cloud, when you're doing the cloud testing, when you have a different environments, the resources which you already have, you can just kind of make the best use of that resources and divide them into different environments so that they can function properly. So this pattern of usage of the resources are available on the cloud, which is not there in terms of like the conventional testing of the applications. We have a virtual or the online user access simulation, on the cloud testing. So whenever you're doing the cloud testing and you want to create some of the virtual users also, you have that capability, like that the service provider can give you the virtual users, which you can use for testing your application or the product which is there. In terms of conventional testing, that is some kind of users which you have to create when you want to when you want to test the conventional product or conventional application. So that online users, the real-time users which are there, that simulation is available only like in the conventional part. If you want to like generate a traffic or generate the online data which is required for you to do the different type of testing, so that cloud service is providing you that virtual data which is required for you to test. So that is not the case in terms of conventional, because all the infrastructure is available on the on-premise. So you have to generate that traffic data. You have to get that data added into your application so that the simulation is possible and you can do the testing. Um, in terms of like the cloud testing, you can do whenever the testing is required, like whenever you need the testing to be done on the application or on the on your product, you can do it, because all the resources which is provided by the cloud service providers are available 24/7. So whenever you want to do the testing on the application, you can do the testing. So on demand testing is possible. When it comes to the conventional part, you need to like when as I told you, like whenever you want to do the testing, you have to add the data. You have to whatever resources are there available on the infrastructure, you have to install that resources so that you can do the testing. So it is not a kind of like on demand that, hey, I want to do the testing of the application just after 10 minutes. So for that, you have to pre-plan it in terms pre-plan it like, okay, I will be doing the testing on after 3 or 4 days. So I need to do all the pre-installation of all the resources when you want to do it. Uh, Coming up to the cloud testing, the costing of the testing which you do on the cloud-based application, it totally depends on the resource usage. If you see like your application is not that much complex, it doesn't use that much resources, so there is costing less. If you have a very complex application which uses lots of backend systems, which uses lots of resources in terms of load balancers, or if it uses lots of cloud services, then the costing will change. The costing will definitely increase. In terms of a normal the conventional product, like even if the small product will require the hardware cost, it will require some kind of software cost. So software cost might be little less, but the hardware cost will be definitely more, because you're creating the whole infrastructure only for your application, and that is something which is going to be a physical infrastructure. So definitely like the cost of the testing will definitely increase, because you need to create a separate test environment, and that requires again different infrastructure. So in terms of cloud testing, when we are using more testing tools, it is more economical. It costs very less when you want to use the different testing tools, because nowadays the cloud service providers are providing you the services to integrate your application, integrate your application with the different testing tools. You might have heard about Sauce Labs, you might have heard about Browser Stacks, which are the cloud-based testing tools. So nowadays, these cloud service providers are giving you different capabilities to integrate with this cloud-based testing tools, and you can do the testing in the environment in the cloud-based in the cloud services also. Not in terms of conventional testing, because whenever if you want to use some the browser stack or something, again you have to pay the extra cost for the browser stack, or you have to pay the extra cost for the tools which you are going to use for your application testing. So that requires again more licenses, that requires again another installation which needs to be done. That is not in the case of the cloud testing, because the installation and the licensing part is already taken care by the cloud service provider. uh, the cloud testing is less time consuming, because the testing tools which you need is already integrated with the cloud service provider. The resources are already provided by the cloud service provider, so it really takes less time into testing, so that you as a QA can concentrate only on testing the functionality of the application, or I can say doing the functional testing and the non-functional testing. Rest of the other testing which we talked about, ability testing and everything, that is most of the time taken care by the cloud itself. So the cloud testing takes very less time as compared to the conventional testing, because that testing tools, again, it requires more infrastructure. You need to install the testing tool into your local, and all the settings has to be done on your system, so that you can do the testing on the application. So all that pre-work thing which is required, that needs to be done separately on the conventional testing. But in terms of cloud, it is already available to you. The resources are available to you. So it's comparatively, less consuming. Okay, so with that, that's the end of the the session, which talks about more on the challenges of the cloud testing and what exactly the cloud testing talks about. So we'll first of all take the queries from the Q&A part which we have asked. So currently our project fully deployed into cloud, and we test as a conventional method. So what are the new things? Sorry. Yeah. What are the new things added to that in respect to cloud testing? Uh, I think, Pradeep, the main important thing we have, discussed about is the performance testing and security testing. This is the area where, like, the most of the QAs do doesn't pay that much attention, because they think like, okay, everything is on the cloud, we are providing maximum usage of the resources, so there should not be any performance testing. That is not the case. I don't know, many of you have heard about the carbon emission quotient, where, like, we are mostly like, we should use very kind of whatever, uh, how much resources we need, that only we should use. We should not use the excessive resources which are not at all required for the product to work on. So that's why the performance testing is something which you should concentrate on. The security aspect is also equally important, because cloud services provide you the security in terms of the infrastructure, but the functional product which you're working on, for that product security, that is also equally important, because as Ajay has already mentioned, the data leaks are happening recently, and the data leaks do happen with the big giants also, like, from the Google, from the different companies. Even the Facebook has a data leak problem. So these are something which you should take care of it. Rest all, the functional testing, the way you do the functional testing, the way you do the manual testing, automation testing, all that, it's pretty covered and pretty same as compared to the conventional method. Okay. Yeah. Nowadays, different managed service provider like Cloudflare, Versal provide services. How we go to test these services in future? In context, someday back, Cloudflare down and depends on web app are down. Okay.
Okay, I'll take this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in this, if you are working on the multiple cloud provider, right, or you are integrating with them, as I can understand in this way. So you mentioned the Cloudflare down and depends on the web app are down. Yeah. Yes. So in that, you have to just check with those people that what is the downtime of that application, right? And accordingly, you handle. As you see in the on-prem as well, if something is goes down or some service is got down, so you are always taken care of those part beforehand, right? You know that. So and you said that key, okay, this is my downtime and this is the maintenance time of that application. So you are always taken care of those parts. So you have to think on that area as well. We don't have any, I'm saying that we don't have any access to set that no, your downtime would be changed according to the my application. That won't be happen. We can't say that to the data providers only. But yeah, we have to check those parts. If needed, Pradeep will get back to you on deeper way, right? Just for the time constraint, I'm just taking the one of the question again. The Lakshmi said that what are the major challenges we are facing the automation while the cloud testing like DB validated in the cloud? So Lakshmi, so the thing is all the cloud data provider, right? The cloud provider service have their own DB, right? They have their own database. And if you're migrating with the any of the database, you have to check that, okay, these are the integration you have seen. And as part of the automation, right? If I'm talking about like automation while doing the cloud testing, right? So you're not automating any cloud thing. You are automating your application, right? So you are automating your application the same way which you are automating in the on-prem. There is no such difference at all. So there is a pipeline you created. The pipeline either provided by the cloud provider, or you are using any third party pipeline to automate this thing. So your code should be there only. You are pushing your code and it is working on the same way which you are testing on the on-prem. There is no such difference at all. It just to check that either you are utilizing their resources for the DB or not, or you are just integrating with those things. That's it. Yep. I think we are good. Yeah.
Yeah, so finally, we look forward working with you, all of you. If you have any queries, Ajay is, we can see the details of Ajay, details of mine also. You can just, kind of mail us. We are available on the link chat. So, you can connect with us on the LinkedIn for any further queries. We know, like, this cloud testing is a very vast, subject. We do have different kind of testing which we do on the cloud, cloud environment. So covering all that is a little difficult for us, like, so that's why we have stick to one of the kind of cloud testing, which we call it as a cloud testing, or testing the cloud based application instead of the cloud infrastructure. But yeah, if you need if you want to understand some aspects or some components of cloud testing, yes, you can contact us, and we'll try to answer your queries. Yeah, with that, so I'll take it off to Indu.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ajay and Tushar. Yeah, that was a interesting session. Thank you for your time.